Hi, this is Gardner and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
A topic of discussion over the last few weeks, notably from the end of ESL1 Cologne on, has been pro players lashing out at me on Twitter, saying I'm shit, or don't know what I'm talking about, or they don't respect me, usually some sort of reference to ginger hair, you know, all the boxes are checked that you'd expect. So you think most recently of Zeus from Navi, you think of Snacks from now Mouse Sports, formerly Virtus Pro. But going back in time, you can find other examples. You can go back to the beginning of CSGO. We've got Steel when he used to be playing, actually I think it was for MTW in Europe. I made some comment once that like I didn't know anything about the game or something, or something bizarre like that. Semphis once implied actually I didn't even watch the matches. I actually had a whole thing with him on that Peakers Advantage show, which is kind of fun. Get Right, obviously in that classic video from DreamHack summer 2015, I think it was, before the semi-finals. Semphis, oh sorry, I already said Semphis. Taz, obviously Taz, I think once on his stream got mad about me doing a Who Is Taz video where I made this point, which was kind of a bit like inside info, but whatever. It wasn't like privately told to me that people in his team thought he was the general and that he had a bit of an ego, etc. He didn't particularly like that. Understandable why. I mean, then again, someone with an ego probably also wouldn't enjoy having that said, right? So this sort of thing happens. It's gonna happen, and it has happened in the past. Understand this. Due to the nature of both the business we're in and my persona within the business and the different roles that I play. And people have a hard time sometimes seeing kind of the blur between them and which particular role are you playing at what time and what does that mean? Is that serious? Is that a joke? Understandable, right? So first of all, when it comes to just criticism, just saying like this player played poorly or he's letting the team down or he cost the team on a round or something, even just within that realm, which is obviously part of being an analyst, players are going to have a hard time handling it when they're playing badly. I mean, they don't know why. Their teammates don't know why. They want to play better. You know, there's all these emotions being connected to what they're actually doing for a living. They've got all this scrutiny on them. They've got hundreds of thousands of people watching them. Their families watching them. People they want to impress, they're watching them. They've got the expectations of what they want to accomplish in their career, what their teammates want to accomplish, what their organisation demands of them sometimes. They've got job security. If they start playing like shit and their teammates want to cut them, yeah, guess what? They're going to be out of a job. They're not going to be getting that big salary. They're going to be in a worse team, or their career is going to be going downhill. Maybe this is the team they always dreamed of playing for. Then you've got their standing in the eyes of the fans. Yeah, there are a lot of fans who are just casual fans. You know, they don't watch the game in depth. And so when they see someone play badly, and then they hear that person get criticised, yeah, that's what they're going to use as their kind of grist for conversations around the virtual water cooler, whether it's a forum or on Twitter. They're going to be saying, yeah, oh, that guy was the reason why, and he's shit and stuff. And yeah, these narratives can sometimes get out of hand. Some of them are justified, but some of them can absolutely go way too far in that respect, right? So nobody wants to be criticised or have their poor player performance at their job pointed out to everyone, you know. If you have a bad game, you hope it goes under the radar. No one was observing you with that guy, right? You don't want everyone to be looking at it and say, hey, look at this over here. Especially when to you might think, why not just look at the guy who's top fragging and just point out what he's doing, you know. It's a different way of seeing the game. So I think it's personally entirely understandable that pro players get upset at getting criticised, especially when it's someone who doesn't meet their standards for what they respect when it comes to knowing about the game and even perhaps naively, if they don't know about the business, being in a position to be allowed to speak about the game. Because I was never a pro player. I wasn't a pro player in CSGO. I'm not an ex-pro in any context, in any game. I often say this to people, hate on what I've done in my formula as much as you want, but go find me anyone else in CSGO who's at the top, but as many big events and majors as I have, who wasn't even a pro player on any level in any of the games. All the dudes I'm with on the desks are all fucking like either legendary players or actual full-time pros at some time in the past and have like mad connections of information and ex-teammates and all sorts of shit. I'm just a dude up there giving my thoughts, occasionally talking to people. So it's also the same issue, by the way, that coaches and managers used to have with players back in the day. In fact, until the last few years, basically, when you got the real coaches and the real manager. Because back then, they would try giving their input to players, or they'd try saying stuff, and the players would just be looking at them like, you shut the fuck up, what do you know? Like, I've seen some players, pro players, go mad at a manager behind them during a live match. Like, well, you shut the fuck up, we know about that, stop telling us that, I didn't die there, I was pressuring him, you idiot. You know, I get it why they're going to lash out in that scenario. You've got to understand as well, a lot of pros determine the value of other pros based either on how good you are in the game. Like, a lot of them go way too far with that. I've seen pro players who talk mad shit on like a really good player for another team, but who plays like a supportive role. But they think because their aim's better, that like, well, of course I can talk shit to him. You know, I'm higher in this hierarchy. It's like, it doesn't really work that way, does it, dude? Like, we're all playing a role. Or you can be legendary as a result of your accomplishments. People are way less likely to talk shit to Neo, who's playing terribly the last few months, because he's Neo. Dude, he's like the best player in 1.6. He's accomplished amazing things in CSGO. He's been a super sick clutch player. Doesn't matter that he's playing terrible now. They're not going to talk shit to him the same way they would to Cadian if he had a bad game, because he's Neo. They respect his accomplishments, what he's done. I haven't won any trophies. I won Journalist of the Year, to be fair, but I've never won a fucking major that someone else aspires to do, and therefore, even though they're better than me in the game, which they all are, by the way, means that they're in a position where they're like, oh, at least respect what you did and how you got to your position. They also don't know my story, how I got to my position, so it makes a lot of sense, right? Then you've got to add in, they can also look and go, forget what he knows and all the rest of it. He's clearly terrible at the game. I am. They're, at the very least, even the worst pro player. Like, who are we going to pick out as the worst pro player? Let me think. Well, first of all, the problem is at the moment it's probably all the win strike guys, right? Because they never should really be in a position to be in front of our eyes in a major quarterfinals. But okay, if we're going to pick beyond that, we're going to have to pick someone like Dead Fox, or in terms of like how famous they are, someone like Henny, I think would be a pretty good pick. Adren back in the day, not the one from Kazakhstan, the one from North America, who thankfully now everyone has to go, do you mean the one from Kazakhstan? No, the old one that doesn't fucking play anymore. These are probably like the worst active pros when they were active, right? Yeah, fair enough. They're obviously 10 times better than me at CS. They would absolutely destroy me in a match. So if they see me talking shit and they value the game based on how good people are, they're going to be like, who the fuck is this guy? I'd wreck this guy. How is he talking shit? I get it. There's something in your brain when you think it through doesn't make sense. That's absolutely logical. Like, it's not really a surprise. There's nothing irrational about that, really, except that you have to obviously put yourself in a frame of mind of like, well, not really about who's the best. It's about analysing your player and what you did. It's not relevant what they did. By the way, that's another way pro players often think. They often think, very, very good pro players who are headstrong will think like, it doesn't matter that I made a key mistake here. I dropped 30 kills and I won a bunch of rounds. So why are you critiquing my mistake here when you can't do any of that shit? You got way less kills. It's actually like people are in pogs and in matchmaking. There's a lot of pros that actually have that shades of that mentality. Usually it's only the extreme ones, the simples of the world, that go that far. But there are other stories out there. So you know what? On occasion, I get it that people lash out. It's entirely human. They're reacting emotionally. Some of it's rational. Actually, if you accept their initial premises, it's quite rational. Some of it's irrational. You know, they're not understanding the concept of the show and the fact that not all of this is serious, mate. Some of it's jokes, isn't it? So then we come to that aspect. You move beyond criticism, like legitimate analysis, and you come to, let's just be real. You can call it banter. It's just mockery, isn't it? It's having fun, but it's mockery. Now, there was once a comment that Zeus, not the one from Navi, unsurprisingly, the manager, the coach rather, of Team Liquid, formerly SK Gaming, who said in an interview he did, I think it was the one he did with Gaules, the legendary former Generation X player from Brazil, where he was talking about me, actually. They asked him something about me. I can't remember the context. And first of all, he gave me like a really nice compliment. Like he actually pointed out that in terms of like journalism and stuff, I was doing a really good job. And he gave the example of that famous thing where the Luminosity guys, Fallen, was coming out and saying stuff like, oh, we don't want to go to SK. SK's been, their manager, their owner's been lying and all this stuff. Yeah, actually, when you read between the lines, as I did in my famous videos, it was very clear that, like, Fallen was full of shit on some of that stuff. Like, he definitely didn't represent all his teammates. You could just tell that by the way he was talking. And all the circumstances and the order of events didn't line up with the worldview he was presenting in his personal view and narrative. And so I broke all that down. And Zeus actually said in this interview that it was insane because I actually got all the details right. I somehow knew all of what was going on, despite the fact he knew I couldn't have had any inside information, because actually no one had any inside information on a lot of those details at that time. It didn't get out of the Brazilian Portuguese scene. I had no information. This was reading between the lines, trying to piece things together, use a bit of lateral thinking, a bit of inductive reasoning. So that was a lovely compliment. But then he did actually say afterwards something I thought was actually quite poignant. It stuck with me, actually. He said something like, and even though he understands, like, you know, joking and stuff, one thing he doesn't like is humiliation. And that word is actually the key point there. It's not just about mocking people or banning. It's about doing it in a way that humiliates them. Like in front of everyone, oh, you've made this guy look like shit and he's the butt of the joke. I totally get why that is, by the way. First of all, he's coming from Brazil. Very different, very headstrong, masculine culture that's about like strength and respect, and you don't disrespect me and make me look like shit. Like, you're going to react in that way if people do that. It's a very different culture than the one I'm coming from. So I totally totally get what he means, and I even know why he dislikes it. But the problem is, that's who I am. That's what I do. That's the way I would express myself in the context of how I choose to present my public persona for my work. Now, would I do that if I was talking one-on-one to a player privately in a bar? No. In fact, I'd only really roast them generally if either they've shown they're open to it, or they're friendly with me, or we're on a banter basis like that, like they come and say something to me like, oh, nice prediction in that game. Then we might have a bit of a fun, bit of repartee back and forth. But I wouldn't just go up to a player in a bar like, you were fucking shit in that 1v1, you're the most dog shit. Like, obviously that would never happen, would it? It's for the show. It's not for them when I'm doing it to the camera. That is for the audience, for the people watching. It ain't for the pro player. So he's taking it like a personal message. It ain't for him, is it? And the reason why I say it's who I am is because as a fan, as someone who watches the game myself, I'm a massive elitist. I don't think I've ever held this as any sort of secret or pretended as though it wasn't the case. In fact, I've been very open. In fact, I've built it into my persona that, like, I'm the most ridiculous elitist ever, right? If you're not the best, who gives a fuck? You're shit to some degree. I mean, you are on some relative scale, but you're not obviously in an objective sense. I genuinely do not like watching mediocre or bad teams or players play. Now, to be fair, I've also watched a lot of Counter-Strike in my life, and I've seen a lot of great teams. I don't have time for the sort of everyday bullshit minutiae of, like, this player who's never going to do anything, he's wasting my time in this match, playing like absolute garbage, he's going to go out in the next round, so can we just skip this forward to the really good match when, like, FaZe is going to play SK next or whatever. Obviously, that's a dated reference now, but whatever. Remember when SK used to be a good member? There we go. So I actually find it irritating to watch mediocre players. I don't like having my time wasted. I feel like it fucking sucks. I hate seeing poor skills and decision-making displayed, especially from people who know better, should be practicing more, should be putting in more effort. In certain cases, you can certainly be bad just because you don't have the skill set. I would genuinely rather just watch the elite teams play over and over and over again. That's why I often say to people, if I had 4 more hours in a day, I wouldn't go and watch fucking Sprout games or Space Soldiers online games. What I'd do is I'd take those 4 hours and I'd go and watch more old VODs, either from a different esport to get more knowledgeable, or I'd go rewatch loads more classics. I'd go watch DreamHack Summer 2014 when Virtus.pro, the CIS squad, played NIP, and it was like, oh, they're going to beat them again, fucking hell no, maybe Nip's going to actually lose again online. Like, I'd go watch that match and watch it over and try and figure out something new and look at it in the context of what I know now, like 5 years later. I wouldn't spend it watching the most dog shit teams. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to be the guy who knows everything about all the shit teams. I'm trying to know everything about the top teams and have a hopefully a cohesive and interesting mentality and kind of philosophy on the game in that respect. So when you watch this kind of stuff, I've actually tried in the past criticizing people but not putting any banter in. Just being critical in that sense of being elitist, but not making it like really pointed or lots of sick banter. Go back and watch. It was in I think it was DreamHack Summer 2014. It was the one that NIP won over Na'Vi in the final. And in the semi-finals, because of the way the bracket draw went, because it was a random bracket draw back then, Virtus.pro ended up playing Na'Vi in the round of 8. This is when Virtus.pro was very good. Remember, they won the major a few months earlier. And so, because they played Na'Vi then and Na'Vi beat them, this is when Guardian was a beast, they ended up playing Epsilon in the semi-final. And at the time, Epsilon, which, yeah, they had HawpT, but even his form was way off. He was the in-game leader in an AWPer at the time. They had Kiyoshima, but he was still on the come-up. They had, like, SF, who, I mean, fucking cheated and obviously wasn't that good on LAN. And they had some fairly bomb-ass players beyond those players. And even those players weren't in peak form. Like, Kiyoshima hadn't really come online yet. He was still growing as a star. HawpT was degraded because he was trying to be like an all-around in-game leader, passive AWPer, when it's fucking HawpT, for fuck's sake. So anyway, when this semi-final took place, at the time, we used to have very small crews at these events. So even though I was there as an analyst with Lurpis used to jump on and do colour commentary as well. So I colour commentated this game, I think with Semler. I think Semler was the play-by-play. And if you can go find this match, it's probably like fucking nails on a chalkboard, because this was a terrible game. Na'Vi didn't have like Flamey and Seeds, and I think they had Seeds at that point in time, and really sick players. At the time, Na'Vi was like a decent team, maybe like 6th best team in the world, 5th best team, but they weren't some world-class team. And so in the game, they actually made a lot of mistakes. They were constantly making mistakes in how they attacked the sites and then how they played out the clutch scenarios and 1v1s and flanks. They were doing it terribly, but their skill level generally was so much better than the skill level of the players from Epsilon, that they kept winning rounds. And then you'd watch the Epsilon players, and some of them would actually make the correct decision, and then some of them were too shit to have the skill level to actually pull off the kill. And so it was the most frustrating match I think I've ever seen. So I casted it as straight up colour commentary, criticising all the stuff I was seeing, because it wasn't wonderful Counter-Strike. It wasn't a lot to be praised, I'm afraid. Now, that was one of the most hated casts I think I've ever seen from the comments. People despised it. And actually, when I go back and watch it now, unless you basically are me, and even if you're me, it's not really that enjoyable. Like, there's no entertainment there. There's not banter. It's just a raw critique of terrible play. Nothing fun about it. Terrible viewing experience. So you know what? I developed this style. I thought, you know what? If we're going to criticise people, if we're going to, let's make it fun. Let's make it entertaining. That's going to be the sort of sugar to make the medicine go down. And I'm going to do this, but we're going to make it kind of enjoyable regardless. Or if you don't enjoy it, you don't enjoy it in a way where it's like, oh, fucking arsehole, but whatever. I guess that's vaguely funny. I also... part of my thinking of how I run the desks is I like to balance out desks. That's why actually a lot of my banter went way more ham years after I started doing it. I used to just mix it in every now and then. The reason it became a permanent part of my persona and a consistent part is because I wanted to balance out the desk. I actually learned this quite early on when a lot of people were just going on there, right? Your turn to talk, your turn to talk, a little bit from you, and then we're going to the game. Like, it used to be very dry, quite boring, and formulaic in a negative way. So what I wanted to do instead was, first of all, other people out there, Yanko, Sponge, that's their full-time job. Like, they don't want to attract the ire of players and teams by criticising them all the time or saying this guy was shit. They banter a little bit, they have a bit of fun. Hopefully I like to see if I can try to bring some of that out of them. So actually, I think it's cool that on the one hand, they can praise what's going on and what was really well done in the game, and I'm there to balance it out with a bit of criticism. To some of them, they don't see the point in criticising like that. They also just think like, well, you know, I don't need to say that. You know, I can just focus on whoever the good player was. But it's like, you know what? I personally would get annoyed if I was sat at home watching. I've had this happen myself. I'm thinking, that guy fucking blew 2 red key rounds in the whole game. You're just praising the guy who got the kills. Like, in this scenario, I want someone to point it out. So you know what? That's going to be me in this scenario. It's going to put my mind at ease. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a balance. So there's not just positive stuff. There's criticism as well. Then I also wanted CSGO to be something very different from StarCraft 2 and League of Legends. When CSGO got big, Counter-Strike had been out of the picture for a while. StarCraft 2, League of Legends come up. StarCraft 2, we're talking like 2010 to 2012, biggest game. League of Legends starts to get really big, like 2012 in terms of the esports side. These are games where StarCraft 2 famously, because the casters became stars, and then people were incredibly critical of the casters as opposed to the players in the game as much, people went mental if you actually dared to like criticize certain players or say you did something wrong or be like unduly like, if you dared to mock them or say that, you know, I've seen some wild shit happen. League of Legends, people had to be very, because they were working for the game developer, they had to be very buttoned up and like, wonderful play, and suddenly everyone was fucking great and world class, and like there was no parameters anywhere. There was in a relative world, you'd ruined all markers of greatness. Like, how do you know that this Korean guy's actually the best when you said that the 50th best Korean playing at a Western tournament with people from Germany and France is also a great player, a world class, that top Korean? Like, top Korean means nothing if you mean like the 50th best Korean and not like a top 10, top 5 Korean. So I didn't want to get CSGO to be like that when it came back. I wanted it to actually be a game that, as it grew up again from the small scale, the grassroots, actually contained like some real quality. Because Counter-Strike's always been hardcore. We're not about just selling out. Like, the reason League of Legends is an esport is because there's so many people played it in terms of the fun, casual side that it artificially was able to ram its way in with praying for prize purses to become an esport. Counter-Strike's a massive esport because people love to fucking watch it in the days when there was fuck all to be made. You're just watching it for fun, and people enjoy when you watch Counter-Strike. It's not about casual fun. Remember that you didn't even used to play the game in 5v5 team matches. You were playing in public servers, then the pros were playing a 5v5 match. So like, this is a very different side of the game, and I wanted it to be like that. To be fair, I actually wouldn't like people mocking me if I was a pro or bantering about me, quite frankly. And I got to also add in, another reason you've got to give these guys leeway is you'll notice some of the people who get the most irritated and lash out the hardest are the people who don't have fantastic English language skills. So they're getting the most annoyed because, first of all, they might not really understand what you mean. It might just sort of vaguely be lost in translation. They know it's an insult, but they don't get the joke part of it or what was clever about the way you phrased it or what you were trying to do with the imagery. They just get the message of like, I equals shit. Well, that's just fucking unacceptable. Yeah, we get that. So in the case of Zeus and Snacks, I totally understand why they're going to get as mad. Then you've got the cultural difference. These guys come from like Poland, Ukraine. These are not the UK. These are not northeast banter in a pub. Like, this is a very different world. Even the way they joke with each other is different. So a lot of that's going to get lost in translation, because remember, they don't come from the same cultural background. There's no little video they can give like, here is how banter works, like some fucking World War II propaganda to teach the people at home. No, they don't have anything like that, do they? So they're not always going to get the joke or even the nature of it. Perhaps due to cultural reasons, perhaps due to being unfamiliar with that style of humour or the concept of what's going on with the show. And that's the thing. It's a show. And I'm sorry, but someone, when you want to have comedy, has to be the butt of the joke. I know some of you out there who maybe just love to read fucking jokes from lollipop sticks or something, think that every joke can be harmless. Like, ha ha, why did the chicken cross the road? Like, that's not every joke, pretty much, revolves around this premise. It's like, in some way, we're together on this and that person's different. Haha, look at the difference. We're the same, he's different. That's like a sense of what we're doing in most of these jokes, just for a moment. And then hopefully a bit of creativity, a bit of an unexpected twist, a leap that your brain makes that makes it funny because you laugh with the person as you put together, oh, he was talking shit on him. Like, that's part of what's going on here. Maybe they don't get it. I don't know. I don't know what their background is in understanding comedy. Again, it doesn't matter to me because it's not for them. They're the ones playing the server, getting paid the money, go home and can read the fans praise them if they want. They don't have to watch that shit. Shame if they do. I'd turn it off personally if you're someone who gets triggered by it. In a perverse sense, it's actually kind of a sign of respect if I even talk about your banter about you. I don't talk about the truly shit players or bad teams very often, only those that actually have some kind of expectation around them, whether that's from fans or based on their history of being good in the past and people imagining they can do something now, they're relevant enough to be talked about. To quote the great Oscar Wilde, a master of wit, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. If you're the worst player on a top 10 team and you underperform and it sometimes costs your team rounds or maps or games or tournaments, you know what? Consider your circumstances for a second. You get a nice salary, you get to play in a top team with a lot of fans, you get attention, which means positive and negative. Criticism and banter comes with that territory. That's what you're signing up for. If you want an easy life, free of criticism and just to be praised for what you do and still make a nice living, go to tournaments, go and be the third best player on a tier 2 team, playing the tier 2 circuit, actually get praised as one of the better elements of the squad, maybe make the odd tier 1 event, people will even root for you as an underdog. This is the territory that banter comes with. Whereas that's an easy life, mate. That's just fun. That's chilling back. That's kind of living the life that you might claim to want. So you got to add in as well. I do try to be fair. Like, as much as obviously people who are my favourite players tend to be fabulous players. As I said, I'm a mad elitist. So I'm generally not going to be shit on them much because they're so good at the game. But I've definitely given it to fucking Device over the choking, Hiko over things about his qualities of him as a person, greed in a couple of different senses, metaphorical and physical. FaZe Clan, you think I even banged them in for some of the fucking chokes I've seen from them? Simple, plenty of fucking times. Remember, I actually made that joke about him where he burst out crying when they qualified for MLG Columbus. And even though, I wasn't making fun of him actually crying, and as much as it's when he said that thing where he said something like, I can't remember the line, but it sounded like he was saying about Hellraisers, like, they're just so bad. Whereas I think he said something like, they're just so good or something. And he was crying for the fact that he'd qualified, but also that the other team gave him a great match. It was like an overtime third map. Whereas I actually thought legitimately that he said, like, they're just so bad. And I was like, fucking hell, that's the most next level trash talk. Yeah, this is a guy I've always pulled for. He's a sick player. Everyone can get it. That is the rule of the desk. Everyone can get it because it's all grist for the mill. It's entertainment. Then you got to add in, it's natural that people who go on camera, people who are public personalities, they want to be liked. They want to be the hero. They want to be praised and held up like a lot of these players do. I don't want that. I don't need that, and it's not something I'm seeking. In fact, in some senses, I'm actively going the other way. I learned a long time ago in my life that in terms of like raw charisma of attracting people to me and thinking I'm cool and nice, you know what? Not very good at that. Don't really have the sort of innate qualities that you'd need, and I'm not really the sort of person who wants to like build that up whatsoever. I don't really see that. I'm not really a people person. I'm pretty antisocial, so I don't really see the validity or the quality or the positive qualities of that. So personally, I realised a long time ago go the other way. It's very easy for people to dislike you, mate. So why not make that into a personality that while they dislike you in the way that they want to hear what you said, to argue with it, or to say, well, that's wrong, or to pull against you. So in that sense, I have absolutely embraced being the villain. Again, this is something that comes with the territory. If you are the villain in a fucking play, if the audience starts booing you, right, part of you, if you're an actor, might be like, come on, man, I'm just playing Joffrey out of Game of Thrones. I'm not really him, am I? But again, you are playing the villain. You want them to boo. That is the response you ideally will elicit to some degree. Or they laugh along with you when you're doing something mean to the other character. That's what they're enjoying. That's their enjoyment of the show. So you can't really complain when they then go mad at you. I do it as part of the persona, because part of the persona of the guy is he's so arrogant. He's right about everything. He can never be wrong. That's funny to me. I actually think that's hilarious. So I think people are misunderstanding that in terms of pros as well, because the distinction is desks are entertainment. Yes, everything I say, and this is the key thing that often gets lost from my banter, it doesn't matter how shit the joke I say is, it never comes completely out of nowhere. Like the topic isn't like, right, so big in this game, and I don't just go, that Dennis who used to play with God B was shit. No, the joke actually always comes from when I'm thinking of the real analysis. Then I think, oh, that's actually funny, actually, I'll go with that. So you go with something like that. There's always real analysis behind it. But for me in my role, entertainment is the primary quality I am focused upon. I've got fucking the best minds in the world next to me. I've got YNK. I've got Sponge. I've got Sean Gers, who's a fucking genius, all stood next to me. I'm sure they can provide the dry, analytical analysis of the game. And they've also learned, I would hope, in small part to work with me, to do some of the banter themselves as well. Also, when I go out there and I make my jokes or my harsh criticism, it actually makes room to where the others can now do that. Because I've set the boundary so far out that when they just make a little joke or they make some criticism like this guy played it poorly, compared to me, in a relative sense, they're not even doing anything that bad. They're not really making people go out, get outraged or whatever. You should see some of the fuckers I've seen in games, as I referenced before, League of Legends, StarCraft 2, who got crucified by the community for like just criticising a player playing terribly or saying he's bad when like objectively compared to the top 30 players in the world or top 20 teams, he's nowhere close. These guys get wrecked. No one does that to them in CS. You know why? Because doesn't matter what they're doing, they're not doing any shit like I'm doing, are they? So in that sense, I'm actually creating a safe zone. I won't say space, because fuck that. Safe zone in which they can have fun like that as well. I think that's cool. I enjoy it. I'm literally, in that sense, willing to balance out the desk by being the bad guy. Because you know what? When you've got the bad guy there, that also helps put over the good guy, the fucking baby first. Have you ever seen the WWE? You can't have a fucking Hulk Hogan unless you have someone who's the bad guy, Macho Man Randy Savage or whatever the fuck, the Undertaker, who's going to lose to him, so that then you can cheer, yeah, he didn't just win, he beat the bad guy. That's my favourite guy. Do you think people don't love it when fucking YNK gets a sick comment off on me, or his prediction's right and mine's wrong, or Run Machine did that burn on me? People are loving it. Why do you think I just stood there and took it? Because it's part of the show. Why would you take someone's moment away and try and fuck with them and mess up the whole rhythm of the show? No, he got his off. Well done. Congrats. There'll be other times. Let's have some fun with it. That's the whole point. Everyone is a team there. We're on the same team. We're not actually competing against each other, despite the jokes we might say, reckon on Moses or whatever. So I am there to be the villain. Hopefully, it makes storylines cooler. I pulled against Big the whole way. Never thought they were going to make it. Still don't think they're that good now. They made it in spite of me. It sets up a context that they really were on a sick run. What an epic run. They proved him wrong every step of the way. They also get the satisfaction of beating me temporarily, you know. Of course, I said FaZe would bang them out. You think they didn't enjoy that when they won the fucking match? Why do you think all the team accounts tweet at me and retweet and, oh, they said, well, do that, by the way. It's a great way for us all to get engagement and blow this sport up. Have you ever seen the fucking UFC? Let's do this shit. Let's get it going fun. If you tweet some sick banter at me and you're a top player, I'll retweet the shit. I'll make it fun. Let's get it out there. Let's get it all popularised. Let's get more eyes on the game and more people caring about these fucking matches. I'll give you a couple of examples. In League of Legends, a guy called Loco Doco used to be a friend of my co-host on something like Monte Cristo, and I knew him a bit from being in Korea. I wasn't like close friends with him or whatever. So when he had this mad feud with Monte Cristo, because I actually thought he mistreated Monte Cristo, I was on Monte Cristo's side on that one. So then Loco Doco started battling with me, but going back and forth on Twitter, and we were making these bets. I think we made a bet of who would win the split or whatever. So when TSM, admittedly, they made a sick roster move, and then they made it to the finals and won 3-2, an epic close fifth game. right after they won this championship. TSM at this point in time had lost 2 splits to Cloud9, who'd overtaken them. They needed to win this split to make it sure that they were going to make it to Worlds. You know, this is his first coaching gig in his first split. You'd think when they win, he'd be too busy holding the trophy and hugging all the players, and afterwards with the champagne, popping bottles in the club, and then maybe a few days later, a week later, he might think, hey, you know what, remember that fucker who talked shit? Let's get that tweet up. No, an hour or something like that after he won the championship, he tweeted at me like, you know, you must call me Lord now, like you were wrong about this bet, you should apologise. Like, it meant something to this guy. It was a storyline. It was a cool element of the narrative. Likewise, why do you think Zeus tweeted that right after he wins the SL1 Cologne? Because what better time to talk shit? You just won. You proved the person. I mean, you didn't really prove me wrong. I said you were individually a bot. I said you were a great leader, by the way, but you didn't really prove me. I guess you got the 30 frag game for like the 3rd time in 1,200 matches or whatever. So fair play, you know. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut eventually. Then you got to add in, I'll give you another great one. A lot of people don't know this story actually, is when before DreamHack Cluj and Poker, the 2 best teams in the world was TSM and Envious, and Envious used to beat TSM in direct matchups. So unsurprisingly, the Envious guys were super cocky, thought they were going to win the major. So I actually said to them when they won DreamHack London, where they beat TSM, but it was very narrow. TSM was Astralis basically back then. I said to them something along the lines of like, oh, you know what, since they were like drinking champagne, because they want to say, tell you what, if you win the major, I'll buy the champagne. Because I was sort of saying to them like, fuck you, you're not going to win the major. By the way, TSM's going to win it or whatever. And so when they won the major, you think they weren't waiting for me to get back to the hotel? Like, Thorin, come here, the champagne. And obviously I bought it for them. Now, to be fair, I did buy it. And then when they said, I'll save this for a video, but there's a funny moment we did the toast that I'll tell you sometime. Understand this distinction. When I do my written content, and it's historical content, it's something entirely different because it's a different person. I'm entirely serious with my tone. I don't talk mad shit on people. If I'm talking about this history of Team Liquid, I'm not going to put, and then of course that Raj little shitter, Adren couldn't hit the back of a cow's ass with a fucking banjo, and so they lost them. No, I'm going to explain how the game went. It's going to be a serious historical piece with journalistic ethics involved, isn't it? Now, it's different if I'm doing an op-ed or I'm doing a video. Videos are somewhere halfway between. Opinions can be entirely subjective and personal. That is the nature of opinions. So I have a formula for what I'm doing on these desks. I figured this out years ago when I was right in the middle of starting to do a lot of the banter. Because initially the banter was for Gfinity, where we had massive downtime, hours and hours sometimes, where we would have to be live on air. We'd just have to keep it going. So we were talking about whatever, making jokes. What I figured out was, when you're at a CS tournament, especially if you're like me, you don't like watching shit games. When the game's really boring, there's not much to say about it, or it's 2 bad teams and neither of them are going to go far, and one narrowly eked out a victory over the other, it's actually better if you use what you got from the game, but in an entertaining manner, a fun manner. That makes the analysis entertaining, where it wouldn't be entertaining if it was just pure analysis of what happened in the match and all the mistakes made, referencing the DreamHack Summer 2014 semi-final. So what I did is, I started to figure out the formula that the worse the game is, the more banter and jokes and mockery you involve, so you can have a bit of fun, you get a back and forth going. That makes the segment at least entertaining. People keep watching the fucking stream and enjoy the actual match, even though the game itself was shit. Then, when it gets more serious, deeper in the tournament, bigger match, better game, you start cutting it way back until eventually you get to the semis and the final. There's almost none there. There might be a little bit in the case of the big one, because that's like an underdog going that far. And again, I'm playing a specific role there. If it's like FaZe versus fucking SK in the final in 2017, I'm not going to be talking mad shit. It's a fantastic game. I'm just going to be there setting up the epic storylines. And that's another thing. Just as I actually allow the epic games to breathe and not banter all over them, I also, on the other side of the equation, when it is a great match, have done more than anyone, I would personally say, to add meaning and engagement to events, in the sense of building up the mythological, the historical angles of what's going on, why this is amazing, trying to transmit to people the emotion of a sick fucking game. It's not just because these are 2 top teams now. It's because 3 of them used to play in one team years back against that guy and he always beat them out, but now it's their time to win, and will they come through or will they be denied again, and they'll realise nothing's changed of it. That's the shit I want to get over. Why do you think I do all those fucking intro pieces where it's like epic? It's like, from a world where TSM were the best, came in via... Like, yeah, because it's fucking sick, isn't it? I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. That's part of who I am as well. So you know what? After all that, as much as people might think, this is weird, you're always going back on it, fucking harsh on them on Twitter. Yeah, that's going to happen. I'm going to keep doing that to the day I die, mate. But let's cut these pros a break. This is their career But it's also their life. It's not only their job and what they do for a living. It's their entire life. They themselves mistake their persona as a pro player for who they are as a person. They sometimes blur the lines as well, because that's what happens when you get wrapped up in that life for long enough. So I understand they want respect. They want praise. We all do to some degree. I mean, not a lot of people can take it like I can, but fair enough. They have bad days. They have down moments. And you know what? When it all gets too much, they get emotional. They lash out. Again, I can take it. It's not a problem, guys. I can banter back with them. I can take the abuse. I can just laugh it off. I can go on. It's a shame some of them can't, but to be fair, we're all different people. In that sense, I am the Dark Knight of analysis desks, you know. I take it because I can, because someone needs to. Pros need to understand it's a show. This is entertainment. Yes, we're all here to watch really important, great Counter-Strike games, but we're also here to find a way to enjoy the bad games as well, and the silly things and the stupid moments and the downtime, and fill 10 minutes while your mouse is broken and you haven't got the proper drivers. We're all part of the show as well. The collective show is what I'm talking about, and that's what people will remember. They remember events. They don't just remember one game only. They remember what an amazing event, back-to-back. Same with the UFC. They remember the cards more than just one fight oftentimes, and what an amazing feeling that whole experience was. So in that sense, even the pros and the people on the desk, we're in it together as well. We're not actually against each other. We're all colleagues in making a great show that everyone's going to tune in and watch in the millions, and therefore we all go home stacking that fucking 6 Skrill. Just like the WWE. It doesn't matter if two people fight in the ring in the game, in a particular match, and one wins and one loses and one gets knocked out in a fake style. They're all part of the show. If the WWE succeeds, they all succeed. And hopefully they put each other over and they all play their roles. That's what we're doing here. So fair play. Cut the pros some slack. I'm not going to, but that's not really what I'm trying to do, is it? This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Daniel Yordanov, TTMXMP, VeXii, HawpT, Robert Baxter and Travis Greb, with a special thanks going out to Jerky's Minion. Want teasers for my upcoming content? To ask a question for my monthly AMA? How about taking part in a discussion with me about esports? Or perhaps you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Become a part of the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.